Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Shadow of the Erdtree. We're back again for our next set to compare. It's finally time to talk about some spells. This is the sorcery of the game, which had a strange showing in the DLC. Less spells were added than we wanted, but there were some worthy considerations at least. And there's this big gap between the S tier picks and above compared to even right below that. On the bright side, there are some ultra strong options right now. There's a lot to discuss. Just keep in mind that this is for our current patch of 12.3. It's PvE focused and limited to the top 15 choices in our opinion. So if we talk about it today, it's a very strong spell. In particular though, there's easy argument today for various spells to take more spots in C tier that we're maybe not going to be able to mention this time. But in any case, with that explained, let's begin down in C tier. Starting with the OG monster, the Comet Azur, which is extremely hard to use in this DLC unless you use a distracting summon, and even then it's awkward. Major changes have happened that have nerfed this setup. Terra Magica, a rune you put on the ground and stand in for magic increase, that used to give you extra 35%, now that's down to 22.5%. That's a massive drop. Cerulean Hidden Tear, the thing that gives you free FP cost for 15 seconds, now only provides that for 10 seconds. And if you were using Jellyfish buff, that was also slightly weakened too. This affects the output you have, although at least we do have the new armor set, Rakshasa, which does buff things by about 6% with 3 pieces on. There's also the new Madding Hand option for another boost before you actually get going for madness procs. Even in this nerfed state, there's still no doubt about the potential of this spell, which is massive. From downtown, you can one cast kill bosses in this game, but it's still a shadow of what it once was, and it's a massive problem in the DLC where there's more often mobile, aggressive bosses that are going to be on you the whole way. So we must respect its output, but it is very hard to run. That could be compared to the Meteorite of Astel, which has a very similar function to the Comet, but instead covers a large area, which will be a lot more consistent in the DLC with these mobile bosses. Also down in C tier then, a new spell, the Glintstone Nails, or Nail in general, whether you're using the group 1 or the specific one, though we're using the group 1 here. What it is essentially strangely fired out glintstone shots as usual, dealing good damage with good tracking in many cases, building good stagger with the 5 shots. As you spam this out, the stagger builds up, and there are many ways you can boost these specifically, whether it's the maternal staff for the 15% increase there, the finger robe since it is technically finger magic, and with the classic increases of magic and charge damage, you can make this hit pretty damn hard and spam it again really quick. The awkward nature of the way the spells come out though, against a smaller, more agile target, it can just miss repeatedly and it's very frustrating. And of course there are multiple bosses that are like that in this DLC. So it's worth using, but as a utility, not a main DPS tool in my opinion. Similar to the other C tier option, the Carian Piercer, this OG spell, which definitely has its place in your gameplay. A long-range thrust that can be charged for a really nice piercing attack. It's honestly incredible for trash killing, where you've got humanoid enemies that will be staggered and stunned and interrupted by this quick cast or massively destroyed by the charged version. I find it's awkward in boss fights, not something to overly rely on as your main damage source, but again as a poke or trade tool, it's actually not bad. It hits hard and it's got good reach, it still has its place, and I still think it's worthy of C tier. But above that in B tier, another new spell, we have the Blades of Stone. These are really cool. As a gravity spell, this one is actually a pure physical option. There's only other one relevant meta pick that's like that in Rock Sling that we'll talk about, but this means it's buffable with physical stuff. Say your Flame Grant Me Strength, alongside new damage increases like the Blood-Sucking Wondrous or Rakshasas. So being able to cast a physical spell compared to magic or maybe fire or ice, it is a very important thing when dealing with certain enemies. Now this one spawns these rocks onto the target at not so far range. You can charge it though, and it means it ticks up to 3 times, building up surprising damage and stagger, and it even moves somewhat. Not a massive distance, but as the target attacks you while you're moving around, it'll move with you. So playing in melee range with this is kind of required. It comes out quick enough, it's not overly expensive on the FP. The fact you get 3 hits of it on the full charge is so good. It's just that you must cast it from a tiny range, so you've got to play around that in melee. I do think it's more reliable than Rock Sling with the right playstyle though, but there's no denying that Rock Sling comes into the game much earlier and is instantly way more impactful. So very respectable physical damage option for a caster, don't sleep on it. much like another new spell, the fleeting microcosm. You can tap it out or charge it up. Either way, you're going to spawn this kind of portal under the target, which will create this void hole in the air after exploding. The issue with that is there's a bit of delay, right? You spawn the portal, then the orb spawns, then it explodes. So you need to keep the target around that as long as possible, kind of like Blades of Stone, playing in relative melee distance yourself. The thing is, you can just tap it out, let the first version explode, and then get a full charge off after that. Humanoid, smaller enemies can be flinched by that, so it's easy to combo into itself with that in mind. Against bigger bosses, you're going to get this off pretty consistently for great DPS, with surprisingly good damage to FP cost, and many new ways to buff it like Maternal Staff, the Finger Robe, although the Godfrey icon doesn't seem to enhance its damage right now. That must be a bug, so expect that to be patched at some point. So, you know, it could actually get stronger in a coming patch. So give it a try. Finally for B tier, we have Ranni's Dark Moon. The Moon sorceries essentially used the same way. You get one single big hit that's going to debuff the target, meaning they're going to have lower magic negation, meaning your magic damage from then on for the rest of the fight is going to deal more. So in any magic dealing build, you probably want to open a boss fight with the Dark Moon shot and enjoy the damage boost that you get from that for the rest of the boss fight. It will send you into the air, meaning it'll avoid shockwave attacks if that's ever possible, and as a moon projectile, it'll consume other projectiles, which could be handy in boss fights like Consort Radahn with his meteorites. The problem is it's so slow and the damage is not great that it's not worth casting for damage in any situation. You just want to debuff the target as soon as possible and then forget about it. But it obviously has a really good place because of that valuable debuff. Okay, moving up to A tier, we only have 2 picks. First, we have Rock Sling. This is essentially the first spell you'll hunt down on a new playthrough and then probably main it all the way until Lindell in an original Magic playthrough. Again, this is a physical magic option, which is a very important thing when you're dealing with magic resistant enemies. You can buff that with your classic physical buff options like Flame Grant Me Strength, and you can rely on its high stagger to get free criticals or just interrupt the boss in many cases. Also, you can increase the range of it by equipping the Arrow's Reach talisman, but it doesn't get any benefits from Arrow's Sting as a heads up. There is a new talisman that combines those two, which will probably just give you the range. In any case, it generates a lot of stance damage and is a consistent way to hit a big target no problem from very far away. Smaller targets are definitely a problem, and in tighter rooms the rocks are less consistent. Agile targets can be a nightmare, and these definitely exist in the DLC. It's still super good, and I have it in A tier for that reason. Also in A tier then, we have the Magma Shot, which is technically better in the DLC. It fires a ball of magma, it'll also leave a pool of magma behind, dealing nice ticking damage, especially nice against bigger targets that are going to stand in that. That happens whether you tap this or fully charge it, but the fact that you can charge it means you can make it hit really hard. It's been buffed in the past as a better, cheaper spell in general, and now in the DLC we have the Talisman of the Dread, which will enhance magma stuff generally by 14%. This is a magma sorcery, so it benefits from that. So the damage has just become even better. I find it just such a straightforward, easy and consistent spell that hits seriously hard as a great fire option, which is definitely worthy of the memory slots should you come across those weak to fire. Plus, you'll probably be using frost spells at some point, right? And using fire attacks like this helps reset the frost buildup to proc it again. So it has a lot of place in any sorcerer build. Above it though, we have S tier where things get crazy, starting with the Zamor Ice Storm. It's kind of harder to run this in the DLC because the cast is so slow, but it's obviously possible as you can see, and the result is so worth it. The damage itself is super good, the build up of frost to actually get the proc and then get the debuff so they take more damage after that. If you're just using it for that effect, fair enough, but you can rely on this entirely. It's also stronger in the DLC because there's the new talisman, Enraged Divine Beast, which is going to enhance the damage of it by 10%. And that's on top of the original hat, the Snow Witch hat, which is another 10%. It's just super strong and super spammable. Even if it's slow to cast, there's plenty of opportunities to do so, as you've seen me do. Also still S tier in our opinion is the Shard Spiral sorcery. The entire point of this is to use it against large targets, and there are quite a few in this DLC. The idea is this slow moving magic bolt pair moves into a target, and the longer that's in contact with them, the more damage it kind of builds up and up and up, only expiring once it gets to its max range. So against bigger targets, it gets to hit many times, and then you're able to charge it to make it hit harder. It's super cheap to cast, and it's very actually quick even if you don't charge it. So whenever you come across a really big unit, this could very well be your go-to DPS source. So just a great original sorcery. Finally for S tier though, we have the Glintstone Icecrag, which is one of the most reliable things you could do to build ranged frost buildup. If you don't want to commit to the slow heavy hitting Zamor Ice Storm, this is probably your best bet. It's essentially just a ranged frost ball that is boring but very effective. The damage itself is good, it tracks well so it's always really going to hit, and it's just such strong stats build up for frost. Very quickly dealing good damage, proccing that, which is extra damage, debuffing them so they take more damage, and then cycling into a different spell, or just continuing with this. I would probably say it's ultra worth though as your main frost spell, and then swapping off it once you get the proc. But for that purpose, it is hard to beat. But that now brings us to S+, where we're talking about things that are going to hit ultra hard, that are arguably the best things that you can use in the game in general. Firstly, a new pick that we all know about, so I'll be quick. It's impenetrable thorns. Basically, you're able to deal massive damage very quickly, very effectively through the burst of this spell. You have incredible bleed build-up, and with the maternal staff that has incredible arcane scaling, you can get really fast stats build-up because of that. They did kind of mess with an original staff that used to do that. Now we have this new one that does the same thing, so I wonder whether they're going to nerf that via the staff, but this is one of the strongest, arguably strongest spells in the game for its ridiculous stats build-up, which is just so dominant right now that everyone just knows about this one. So moving on to another original fantastic pick, it's the Carian Slicer. This is one of the fastest, most effective successive attacks in the game. It's hilariously cheap both on stamina and FP, so you're able to absolutely spam this out. And it has a quite interesting moveset where you could do jump attack or running attack or the standing lights. So you're not just stuck to one spell that does one thing only. It's kind of versatile in the way you can use it. But in general, you're going to just whip it into a target many times. With the amount of ways we can buff up our damage, that becomes comical super quick. It is very hard for me to suggest any sorcery build where this isn't there for any situation where a few quick hits isn't going to be amazing. Much like the Night Comet, which is a chargeable, spammable, ultra high damage spell that's also a night sorcery, which means the target's never going to dodge it, such as say Messmer or Relina that can be really annoying for that. They just don't even know it's there. My advice for this is to do a quick charge, so just tap it, and then the follow-up, which is faster, you can hold that and then hold the rest. The damage becomes ridiculous and the combo comes out very quick. Obviously, the reason this is so good is because of the two staffs. A Staff of Loss is going to boost the damage of this by 30%, but for some reason when you have two, so one in either hand, it goes up to the 60% boost, which is why this is so strong. You need to have two Staff of Loss in both hand, and that's a bit unfair to say because you can only get one per playthrough. So if you're not willing to go into New Game Plus or get a friend drop you one, then you're never going to have that. Now, obviously, there's the original Comet that works the same way, but isn't a night version, so, you know, they're going to dodge it. If it wasn't for the double Staff of Loss, the normal Comet would actually deal better damage. Normal Comet will come way sooner in a playthrough, and you're not going to need the drops to get a second staff anyway. So for many, the normal Comet will just be a great alternative pick. But if you can run the two staffs, Night Comet is one of the strongest things in the game, easily. So that's our S+ category, except for one quick addition, Terra Magica, which you've seen me use in all of this. Every single person's going to be using this if they're using magic in their build. It's a rune you put on the ground that lasts a little while and enhances your magic damage while you're in it. It used to be 35% increase. Now it's a 22.5%, which is still absolute required for every magic build. So obviously, it's still S+. But yeah, there you have it. That's our current thoughts on sorcery and the top 15 picks compared to one another. Again, I really think there's a lot of spells that we could have slotted here into C tier today, but since there's so many above C tier that, you know, have high value, it was hard to choose a few slots for C tier. So for the other suggestions, you can let us know in the comments. Maybe we'll give someone an idea. But for now, I hope this was useful. I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.